We are coming live from day 2 at Advancing Prefab, joined by Matt Hardy. Welcome. Thanks for taking the time and sitting with us today.
Yeah, appreciate it.
So let's start by kind of giving a little bit about your background and what brought you to Advancing Prefab.
Okay, so pretty interesting background. I've been in the construction industry, specifically healthcare, for 25 years now.
Okay.
But out of college, I started on the electrical contracting side. Really did that in the Midwest and then also in Florida. Started doing prefabrication in those shops 20 years ago. And then recently, about a year ago, I transitioned to the general contracting side, self-performing general contractor side.
Okay.
Really to try to help bring, the best practices for projects as far as prefab is concerned to those projects.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a journey for me, a 25-year journey on prefab. So really coming here is, a couple of things. One, to learn more about, new industries, new things that are out there, but also, to learn about what we can do to help our clients.
Yeah, very nice. So from the GC perspective, how do you see the kind of the momentum and the evolution of modular?
Well, I think that there's a lot of momentum, a lot of people talking about it. I think this event is in its 7th year now.
Yeah.
I think that one thing, we can focus a lot on, how to improve prefab, how to improve modular, and that's really good. I think that, the big conversation that is kind of overarching to all this is that, we're facing with construction spending a 650,000 skilled worker deficit moving forward.
Right. It's a major problem
through 2023. Yeah. And I think that it's clear that it's no longer an option to use prefab and modular. As things progress, in order for us to be able to complete projects, to actually build stuff, which is what we do, we're going to have to rely and integrate on prefab and modular more. I know firsthand from having prefab shops, the efficiency of scale of doing that, how we could achieve better quality and better safety with less people in the fab shop compared to the field side. So I know that it's a solution. And I think that really that kind of encompasses all of this prefab and modular, and this is just the beginning. We're in the early stages of what hopefully will take less than a decade, but it's coming.
Yeah. How do you take the kind of the tremendous knowledge that is in the veterans who have been in it for 30 plus years that are retiring out now, and bring that into the shop, so you're not losing that as they retire?
Sure.
And we're obviously not bringing in new people as the clip that we need, but how do you take that knowledge and really kind of crowdsource it in the prefab world?
Yeah, that is a double-edged sword. Sometimes the resistance to change is also there. So I think the first step in that, in transferring that knowledge, is really providing the basis to and support to be able for people to accept change.
Yeah.
And
sure.
Then once they've accepted the change, then it's our goal to get more of the youth in front of those people to be able to start to foster that.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's also starting slow. Let's concentrate on the portions of our projects that help the most. From a general contracting side, I'm in charge of prefab for Robins Morton. You'd think that, I'd want everything that's humanly possible to be prefabbed on a project.
Yeah.
But realistically, not everything that can be prefab is the best choice for that project. So, really focusing in and reviewing projects early and choosing the scopes, the items that can really help a project, and focusing on those, I think also helps, because you're narrowing that band. You're not trying to bring, everything all at once into a project, so it's a little more focused. That focus can help.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. Are there certain criteria when you're looking at, like, is this a good prefabable
Sure.
component, or does it make sense to do prefab on this? are there criteria that you use to
Oh, yeah.
say yes or no?
Yeah, yeah, and that criteria can be many. Really, right now in the Southeast, with the amount of building that's going on in Florida, my first question is, how is the availability of local skilled labor? Is it available? Is it a tough labor market? I don't know that I've had a single project come back and say, "Oh, it's an easy labor market." Like that
Yeah.
means something, right?
Right.
It's the fact that every market is kind of a tough market says something about our industry.
Right.
So if it wasn't a tough labor market, then we would kind of look more towards the skilled trades and helping skilled trades. That's a big part of what we do, is taking the lessons learned on from any one project. We work with a lot of skilled trades. Hundreds of electrical contractors, mechanical contractors, plumbing contractors. So being able to sum up, the good lessons learned that we've used on projects in those skilled trades, and then share them with our partners, our trade partners, really helps them for the next project, but also helps our owner for that project. So, that would be if there was no shortage of labor, which I haven't heard yet. But then, we really try to focus in on three things. Every client wants the lowest budget, the highest quality, and the shortest schedule. In all reality, we all know that that's probably not realistic. So focusing in on what is the really major need, being able to pinpoint that major need for that client.
Right.
Is it budget? Well, if it's budget, then let's start looking at ways that we can use prefab and modular to reduce cost. And that can be very, very difficult to see it in that light.
Sure.
Quality is pretty easy, very high quality. Prefab and modular is going to check the boxes on in many instances. Speed to market, then we start looking a lot more of just volumetric modular. So focusing in on one of those three areas, and then using that when we're viewing that project early, I think gives us a good basis to get started on how to zero in on what prefab, and we just start cutting from there till we get to what's the best choice for the project.
Yeah. From the owner's side of things, how are you seeing prefab, kind of the perception of prefab change in their mindset, or kind of the momentum behind that?
So it's across the gamut. We have clients and large clients that insist on a certain amount or a majority amount of prefab. We have one very progressive client that demands or sets a goal for 60% of all labor to be performed off-site.
Wow.
That's pretty progressive,
Yeah.
right? And
serial owner?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So, we do a fair amount with them. They're a national firm, so we have clients at that end, and I would say that they're at the far progressive end.
Yeah.
And then we've even seen clients that we've been in meetings with that say, why do we need BIM? So I mean,
Do you still get the what is BIM?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah. Well,
I do
not
the BIM.
really. Yeah,
I was
really
like-
not. What is it? But hey, why don't we really need it? You
Yeah.
got all the field personnel are the best. Let them figure it out. Well, we have to kind of go down the path there of figuring out what is the best for the project. But I can't remember the last time we didn't do a project with BIM. So
Yeah. So yesterday, the expected experience was a kind of a common theme that came up. What is, in your opinion, the expected experience of the industry really needs to demand be different?
Seamless. I mean, and that's something that we haven't seen yet. The seamless transition, and that's where it's just accepted that that's the way that we're going to do it. That it no longer becomes a question of, hey, does this cost less, or hey, does this improve schedule? That concept, going back again to our major limiting factor in our opinion is lack of manpower moving forward. So instead of even considering, hey, is this an option? It's just the only option. It's the first option. It has to happen. Now, how can we improve that experience so that it doesn't feel different from the owner's perspective going through a project, or the trade partner's perspective, that it's just that it feels the same. We just find that everybody's in a much more efficient manner, acting in a much more efficient manner.
What friction do you think is in the way that we need to kind of clear out to make that the ideal state?
Well, I mean, like I said before, there's always going to be a friction to change, to acceptance of change. And it's a big animal. A lot of this stuff is is very different than what we're used to doing. So, ultimately, do I think that the goal would be, follow a lot of other industries where, you could buy a prefabricated Sears home in the 1950s, right? Out of a catalog,
Right.
right? It's not that way now. People want their buildings to be a little more specialized, which costs more.
Yeah.
But there has to be a convergence there of what people are willing to spend and what they're willing to get, where we're getting to that point. In the absence of that, it's still a specialized project by project what works the best. And that change has friction internally and externally.
Yeah.
And risk. It presents some risk as a general contractor that historically we haven't been so concerned about. It represents different contracting terms, the way that we're writing our contracts, which is another thing that has to change, which there's some resistance there. So, just resistance, overcoming that resistance and showing people that, the proof is in the pudding, that this really works, that this really is better. As we're on the path to achieving more standardization where people are picking things from a catalog.
Yeah. Do you spend a lot of time kind of knocking down some of the misconceptions around prefab? I think a lot of people that aren't steeped in the prefab world, you say that, and the first thing that comes into their mind is this ugly cement block that is nobody wants it, or like you're just putting the mobile home, where modular, you can do some really cool custom looking things you would have no idea was actually modular.
No.
So do you kind of knock down those perceptions?
Yeah, and that's been an adjustment for me. That's how I've always thought about it. So, I had that very conversation just a few weeks ago about we were looking into doing some panelized building skin.
Yeah.
And from the architect and engineer, they're like, we don't want it to look like a Walmart.
Right.
So no, that didn't even dawn on me that was the perception of what a prefab or modular skin building looks like. So there's a little, there's still a little bit of getting used to on that, and that's more of an education thing. And we're getting people more educated and sharing a lot more of that information, but hitting home with it, takes some more. This is a good opportunity, have some people here from R&M, this is a good opportunity for people to see more of that and get a little more comfortable with that. So
is there a certain thing that you see the light bulb kind of going off quicker when you're talking and trying to knock down those misconceptions?
Yeah, I think that we're all going to talk about critical path when prefab and modular can improve the critical path on a project.Maybe not, the overall schedule. You would hope that if you improve the critical path, you could also improve the overall schedule. But when we can start talking, when we can really start being comfortable that we can affect the critical path of the project, especially when there's outside factors. If we can dry a building in 2 months earlier in, let's say, Indiana, and that means that we're drying it in October, and then we're not working. We don't have all of our tradespeople working in a building that's wet and cold from November to March.
Right.
That really starts to hit home with people. So. I know that's a large area that we're concentrating on, is what can really benefit the project the most. And once we kind of get over that hurdle of figuring that out and presenting that and coming up with a plan, then we go to the next item that can really help everybody on the project.
Yeah, nice. So changing gears a bit, you brought up the skilled labor shortage. What can really be done to help bring in new fresh blood outside the industry?
This is kind of funny. I live in St. Petersburg, Florida. And just this last weekend before I came here, the McDonald's that's by my house, it said starting position $16.75 an hour. And then shortly thereafter, something popped up on my Amazon account, starting at $17 an hour for warehouse workers. And these are people that are going to the same place every day. They're working in an air-conditioned space. That's a a pretty fair deal. Whereas I know in the construction world, some of those workers, are being started in the field entry level, where they're working in the heat and the humidity of Florida, mud, and different place every week or every day.
Right.
And some of those guys start at $12 an hour. So I think that, that's even before any training starts. I think that we need to look at improving that and looking at ways, how we're going to improve that and be able to make good business sense is to achieve more productivity quickly out of entry level people. And maybe that means bringing them into a prefabrication shop as the first step in the hiring process. You'd be surprised just bringing someone into a prefabrication shop for 6 months or a year, just how they understand what, widget A is, when they're out in the field and things are going on, no one knows what widget A is. They might spend 4 hours looking for widget A. So just getting that jump start can make them more productive, can allow businesses to start that rate higher. I think that that'll help. Education, of course, so that people understand really what's involved with being in one of the skilled trades. Education is a huge piece of that. So pay and education, I think, will help us the most to do that. But that's a whole nother thing that we kind of integrate into the prefab and modular conversation for training, get that speed up quicker.
Yeah, absolutely. I think exposure to what actually is going on in construction is a huge component of it, because there's such a vast gap in what people outside the industry think is happening. They're kind of stuck in construction of the 1950s and have it brought it up to today.
It's surprising too. There's still a kind of I see this sometimes. There's not a level of trust. Just between ownership groups and construction in general. And I think that needs to be improved. I think there's other delivery methods that we can use. A lot more design build, of course, is helpful in the prefab and modular world, but just in the project overall, I think that, and things, different markets change at different speeds, right? There's a lot of work that's going on in Southeast right now, so there's a lot more. There's not as much trust built because there's so much that everyone is trying to jockey just to get work done. You go to the Midwest, and there's a lot more trust there because there isn't the vast scope of work. It's not as vibrant a construction market.
Interesting. So, if I could put a kind of crystal ball and you can look into it 10 years out, what's possible in construction?
10 years?
Yeah.
I think that we will see owners. We're really kind of there already. We're seeing owners, at least in the healthcare market, that are at a point where they are building true volumetric, modular facilities, where their patient rooms, exam rooms are being constructed in a factory, and then they're what we call stitched together on site. I think we could see that grow a lot more. I think that we will see more of a trend towards selecting components, and I'll speak from the healthcare perspective, but selecting ORs, selecting patient rooms, labor and delivery from a catalog, rather than every single room is a one-off, and especially across ownership groups and large ownership groups where they can consolidate on something like that. So I think you'll see more of that in 10 years. I think that's very possible. I think that we'll see a much larger advance in especially robotic layout. I think that we'll see an advance in robotic installation, but it won't be as profound as robotic layout in the field. I think we'll see a very large component of that because the progression there is already pretty intense. Which is very helpful from an accuracy standpoint. Sure. And then software. Software is moving so quickly that it's hard, even if you pay attention, to keep up, right? Or to make a decision, to narrow it down, to make decisions on software. So, I think we will see a lot more, where you're doing a lot more construction from your iPhone than you can imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'm in the tech space, and there's so many popping up all the time that is it's so cool. But you're like, oh, how do you keep up with all this? And you really can't.
Yeah,
you
you
just
can
gotta,
make a decision one year,
right.
and then by the time you get to the renewal on a piece of software the next year, someone else has already come out with something that's more all encompassing.
Right, or even just updates that you didn't really know about or pay attention to.
Yeah, so that's a tough space, in my opinion. It's a tough space to even stay a part of.
Yeah. So one of our kind of core tenets that we talked about on the show is around innovation. So what does innovation mean to you?
Well, there can be so many facets to that. I mean,
Sure.
innovation to me is willingness to change, is humility in the face of change, and being able to accept it.
Yeah.
That we don't know it all.
Right.
So there are always better ways to do it, and even though someone or something might not have the experience or the wherewithal that you do, that they can still bring things to the table that can make everyone else better. So, the innovation, no one will accept innovation unless, they're willing to change. And I'd like to think that we all have a sense about us to be able to accept that we're going to have to change. We can't do things the way that we've always done them. And that's what'll help bolster innovation more and more. If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I love that you brought in people that may be new to the industry, but they're talking about something because they see it with fresh perspective. They're like, why are we doing it this way? And you're like, that's a good question. I don't know why we're doing it this way. This doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And you can, if you have the humility, you're open to that, you can change it pretty quick with fresh eyes.
Yeah, I remember, I don't know, it must have been 8 or 10 years ago, maybe, probably 8 years ago. We were looking at some new construction software, and talking about how nice it would be to do more, instant messaging and a better way to communicate. And I had a very young project engineer say, hey, you should use Discord. Like this would be a great platform to do all of this in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I was unwilling to accept or even consider it, right? Like that was a gamer's kind of thing.
Yeah.
And now I see people in the construction space using it, and that was me being inflexible, not being willing to learn something to even consider it. So I think that's really important, and that's a hard thing to do. We're all so busy that really taking the time to listen to a generation that we don't do a good enough job of listening to. I think that's imperative. It's important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So how do people find out more information and connect with you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, Matthew James Hardy. You can find me there. Robinsandmorton.com. That's our website. We're based out of Birmingham. Have 10 offices, so we're really all over the place. I would say that's probably the best way. You can get to us either direction. But yeah, always happy to answer questions or help everyone I can. I'm pretty bought in on prefab. I've been doing it so long now. For me to not try to advance it or help it would be kind of detrimental. I might have wasted 20 years or something.
Right, yeah. Well, final question for you. If I could give you all construction power and you could snap your fingers to innovate one thing, what would you pick to innovate?
Oh, hospitals. Story with that. I've done hospitals most of my career. And recently my sister came to Florida to visit. Yeah. And she jumped off a dock and unfortunately hurt herself pretty severely. So of course we rushed her to the emergency room. And sitting in that emergency room, it was a hospital that I had helped build. Sitting there and knowing that she was helped at a very stressful time, to me that was an incredible feeling. It was like a feeling of like we're really doing something to help people. So there's such a need for that in the healthcare space. Have an aging population. If there were one area that we could really, really improve, it would be that healthcare space. And there's so many good things going on. Don't get me wrong; it's not lacking. But yeah, if we could snap our fingers and say, hey, we can give you the best facilities at the lowest cost to provide the best care in hospitals, that would be what I would wish for.
Nice. How's your sister doing now?
She's great. She's
Good.
great. Yeah, great care, right? She was
That's
at a
right.
great hospital. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, thanks so much, Matt, for
Yeah.
taking the time.
Appreciate
and
it.
talking with us.
It's been great. Yeah. Thank you.